Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode on my podcast, Made in Business. Today, we have another very special guest welcoming Seema today to our show. Shout out to Brooke, who connected us. I just heard a lot of wonderful things about Seema and a lot of the things that she's been doing at Deloitte. Currently, the U.S. Clients Industries and Insights Leader. She previously worked at Arthur Andersen. She graduated from Northern Illinois University with accounting. And she also has a lot of philanthropical work that she does. She's a board member for the Chicago Scholars Foundation, the finance committee chair and board member, and Leadership Great Chicago. I think she also has a connection with that as well. But I'm sure I'm missing a ton of other things. But Seema, if you want to go ahead and add on or give yourself a little introduction for people so they know who you are and what you do, go right ahead and add on to that.
Well, Jessica, it's so fantastic to be with you. I love this idea of a maiden podcast. I think women in business is really an important topic to me. And it's an important topic to most executives, I think, in the corporate world. So really proud of you for creating this podcast. I'm happy to be with you. So Seema Pajula, I actually just changed roles. I'm the Chief Growth Officer for the $21 billion piece of our consulting business. And so super excited to take on that role. I sit on our firm's management committee, on the consulting executive committee. I've been at the firm since 2002. So I've been doing this for like 28 years, a long time. I started my career in the audit practice. I ran the Chicago audit practice for a number of years and then moved into a firm leadership role and then now part of the consulting practice. So, which is really fun and exciting. I'm one of the few partners, I think the only partner in our firm and 250,000 people that has changed businesses the way I have. So it's really fun and exciting and it's a great challenge. So been in client
Awesome.
service my whole career.
Perfect, perfect. And so for today's goal of the podcast, we're going to start off talking about personal growth, mental mindsets. Number two, we're going to touch upon women in business, some industry insights. And lastly, we're going to end with any advice that she has for young professionals and just for you guys listening out there. So, Seema, if it's all right for you, I'm just going to start asking you questions and we can get right into it.
Perfect.
Awesome. So, my first question is, what has given you motivation and purpose in both your personal and professional journey thus far?
So Jessica, I always tell people I have like three F's in my life and they're positive. So it's family, friends, and fun. Like that defines, I think, who I am. I'm 100% Indian, first generation. So in the very traditional Indian culture, she was brought to this country via an arranged marriage. I found myself and my mom found herself as a single mom with three kids. So she was the first in her family to get divorced in a country where she didn't grow up in and didn't have a formal education, didn't really speak the language that well. She found herself in a situation where, she had these three kids, and how was she going to provide for us, right, in a country that she was not familiar with? There was no one to help us financially. My mom really taught me the importance of education and working hard and instilling in my two sisters and I all the great values of what hard work and having a strong base was going to do to take you into the future. My mom taught me there was no gender barriers. I grew up as a complete tomboy, which for those of you that grow up in the Indian culture, that's not allowed. I kept my hair short. I played with all the boys outside and I played baseball.
Basically, you're just the cool girl that everyone was jealous of that had all of the friends, is what I'm hearing back in
No,
the
I was
day.
the tomboy. I just hung out with all the boys, beat them up too, which was fine. But I was a huge baseball fan. And in 1983, I had the opportunity to meet Cal Ripken Jr., for those of you that don't know him, a very famous baseball player for the Baltimore Orioles. I lived in Baltimore at the time. He was signing autographs, and my mom and I waited in line for hours to get his autograph. And I remember us getting up to the front of the line and my mom hitting me and saying, tell Cal what you want to do. And I said, Cal, I'm going to be the first woman Major League Baseball player. And he said, you go, girl. And it's funny, Jessica, how things come full circle. And the reason why that story is so important to me is my mom really taught me to go after my dreams. And no matter how big or far fetched they seem, I didn't have the talent to become a baseball player, but no matter how far fetched they seem, she taught me it was really important to go after my dreams, but that I had to take really big swings in life. And
For
so
sure.
I tell you that story because it's so fitting And it's funny, Jessica, I had the opportunity at Deloitte to interview Cal Ripken Jr. just 2 years ago. 2 years ago.
Wow.
It was so funny. I said, "Hey, do you remember this, 10-year-old girl that told you?" But he's like, "Seema, I don't remember you in particular, but I remember a little girl telling me that, she was going to be the first woman baseball player." Then you didn't hear it. And if you go, and he's like, after that, I would give talks. And I would say, I met this girl. She said she's going to be the first one major league baseball player. And he's like, it's going to be a left-handed pitcher. Like, so he would look at what he talked about. Anyway, it's fun
That's
how things
amazing.
full circle. But I would definitely say, my family is the most important thing to me. Family is critically important to me. And the lessons that my mom taught me in terms of coming to a new country where she didn't have any infrastructure, didn't have family, didn't have education, and what she provided for my sisters and I was really the most amazing foundation and built really strong values in us about working hard, going after your dreams, and really making a difference.
Wow, that's just like I get like a little bit emotional when you're talking about your mom. And I think obviously like our parents and our childhood has a huge impact on, our future and our trajectory of growing and cultivating this environment for us to feel okay to, push these boundaries of for one, like being a woman in business. I'm really happy that you had that upbringing, despite obviously a lot of the odds might have seemed stacked against you. You didn't, victimize yourself to a point where it dragged you down, but you use that, you get where you are today. And I think you're someone I definitely look up to. So I just hope that one day I'll get to where you are, implementing all the things my parents have taught me as well. I think my dad as well, similar to your background of your mom coming here to America. My dad, he's full Filipino and he immigrated to the United States when he was in middle school, and they're from the Philippines. And my grandma, like, she didn't make a bunch of money. She wasn't a professional in any industry. She was selling like peanuts or, some snacks across the street. And it was hard for her to make a living, provide for a ton of children and to raise them. But my dad, obviously led by example, kind of in the same similar path story that you shared. He ended up creating his own business as well. And a lot of the lessons he taught me from my grandma was just to work hard, stay humble, never forget the grind, that like true worth ethic can get you wherever you want. Just understanding the privilege of being in America in and of itself, it's just such a blessing that I think there's so many opportunities for us in this country. And combining that with you can really get anything you set your mind to is just that's just the formula for success, hopefully. So I think that's a wonderful thing. What would you say was the most important lesson that your mom taught you if you had to choose one?
So, no matter what your circumstances are, never stop dreaming and dream big. And I think that was really, if you were to ask me when I was 10 years old if I would ever be sitting in a seat like this, I would have said, there's no way. But my mom would have said, yes, there is. So
Wow.
it's fun. She lives with me now. We have an
Yeah.
apartment close by for her, but she spends most nights at my house. I love every minute I spend with her. And I love that my daughters are getting to grow up with her and her wisdom and everything that she can bring to the table in our family. She values
Mhm.
family and connections and relationships. When I started my professional career, I didn't realize the
Mm.
importance of relationships. Had I know then what I know now, I think I would definitely do things different. No matter what profession you're in, no matter where you go in the world, I tell people relationships, relationships, relationships. They will get you anywhere in life. They will get you everywhere.
So going on to my next question, what was the biggest mindset shift you had after graduating college?
The importance of relationships and that every
Mhm.
interaction matters. I remember graduating and starting at Arthur Anderson and going to orientation, and you're sitting in a room with like 100-ish people. And I never thought looking around that room, I would want to be friends and build relationships with every single one. Because if I look at who I interact with today, 28 years later, the people that were sitting in that room with me are now CEOs, CFOs,
Wow.
chief executives at companies, right?
Mhm.
And had I spent the time really building those relationships, nurturing those relationships, keeping those connections, when you're in college, you're focused on, school and fun and friends. But the importance of every interaction being important to you in the workforce, I can't underestimate, or I can't say that enough.
Wow.
So I just want you to think about that as you sit in rooms, as you go through your internship, as you're meeting people. Think about every interaction being really, really important moment that matters. I guarantee the relationships you have right now, you will see them in the future.
So I think a lot of times it's also difficult to navigate being friends while not trying to feel that your job is at risk or that, you have to outbeat them or outperform them in a way. So I think that's also kind of tricky in some situations. But what would you say to that with the competitiveness of the industry as well?
Yeah, it is a very competitive industry. I was just looking at the stats for our firm. It's harder to get into Deloitte than any Ivy League college in the country. So Harvard, Yale, you name it. And so it is a very competitive environment. And so, I think what if I was in college again, doing this all over, I would think about how to differentiate yourself in a
Hmm.
unique and different way. So what you're doing with this podcast, in my mind, is a huge differentiator. You're helping not just women, but the broader business industry, right? You're doing a lot. And what could you do that could really make you stand out? Because
Hmm.
being smart isn't what is going to differentiate you, right? What is going to set you apart from the rest of your colleagues and what's going to really make a difference. So, thinking about having the mindset of how do you stand apart, I think is really important in this competitive environment.
Wow.
If you think about our business and most companies, I
Hmm.
mean, we're a client service business. So you're interacting with clients every day, you're interacting with people. So you want someone who feels well rounded, right? So being smart is one piece of it, but what are you doing to make sure you're a well rounded student? But what we
Hmm.
try to do is we try to look at the entire individual, not just the GPA. Obviously, that's important, but what else are you doing? And what are the
Hmm.
kinds of things you're doing to really build your more well rounded self? And so,
Hmm.
you mentioned the not for profit work I do. I am really committed to the Chicagoland community, so to giving back. That's an important component for me. And I think it's almost a twofer, right? I get to give back to this, the city did so much for me growing up, right? Cities and underserved communities, they did a
Yeah.
lot for me growing up. And so I have to give back, and it's my obligation, and I enjoy it. But it's also a way for me to build relationships. So it's really a
Hmm.
twofer because of our executives of some of our largest clients, they are also really involved. They also sit on these
Hmm.
boards. Leadership Greater Chicago, Michelle Obama, Arnie Duncan, Valerie Jarrett, you name it. Those people have been through that program. So
Hmm.
I feel honored and privileged to be, sitting at a table with that kind of talent and those kinds of people. But it really is something I enjoy. And so
That's
finding the thing
amazing.
that you enjoy that can differentiate you, I think is.
To the next topic of discussion. So, as a conference speaker highlighting female leaders in the automotive industry specifically, what trends are you seeing in terms of women's representation and influence within just any industry if you want to touch upon anything?
Yeah, it's these numbers are not going to be surprising, but in a lot of industries like manufacturing or, in our industry, make up less than 25% of the workforce at, the partner level. And so the number one thing I hear my clients talk about, C-suite executives talk about, there is a disparity between who goes to college, who gets degrees, and then how the workforce, the inflection of what the workforce actually looks like. And then we know that research shows that more diversity in the workplace is a key, contributor to competitiveness, innovation, profitability. Non-diverse teams, more diverse teams have 35% higher returns, over
Wow.
40% higher revenue. Yet less than 5% of C-suites have diversity in their C-suite. So it
Right.
is a real, and it's because as you grow up, the talent dwindles, right? The diversity reduces
Hmm.
significantly the higher up you go up in the firm.
Hmm.
And I think, that's something that we're going to have to fix. And so the challenge in our business and that so many businesses are facing is the development and the retention of women. If we did a better
Hmm.
job of developing our female talent, because we hire roughly 55% women in the,
Hmm.
our starting class, but by the time you get to the upper levels of our organization at the partner level, it's less than 25% of our partners. And so,
Right.
what are we doing to really think about development and retention of talent? and making sure women feel like they can make it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a huge issue that we're trying to address. And I think that's something that gives me energy. And that's something that I'm really focused on is how do we do a better job within Deloitte and within our
Mm-hmm.
clients of building opportunities or even deliberate programming around the
Mm-hmm.
retention and development of women.
I totally agree. And I first want to like appreciate and commend you in terms of pushing it forward. I also think as individuals, we need to also take on that challenge ourselves because there's a lot of mental, social things that we've just been taught growing up in society, kind of going back to that point where your mom was like, you can do anything you want. If you want to be a professional baseball player, go right ahead, and just having people around you to reinforce those ideas. So we have to, like, as a society and as an individual, understand that, yeah, these realities exist and it's definitely unfair and it sucks for sure for a lot of us. But being brave enough and having the courage to challenge that, I think, is another thing that's a little bit harder to do because obviously, like with a lot of the companies that I've been researching or just applying for, they obviously have different like DEI programs, or like if you're a woman, you could sign up for this, which is great and wonderful. But I think as well, it comes down to if the person is brave enough to even take a step into that door that seems very, very scary. So I think that's also just definitely a challenge that exists and is pushing us back just a little bit. Going on to the next question of this topic, what advice would you give to women starting their careers in traditionally male dominated fields? Any tips or tricks you have?
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes is from Eleanor Roosevelt, and she said, "Do one thing every day that scares you." And if you think about that, in this dynamic environment, we have to constantly be thinking about how do we take ourselves out of our comfort zone and make the uncomfortable comfortable. And
Mm,
my advice for all the women on this phone is I think as women, we sometimes play it safe. And
yep.
so while I don't do this every day, at the end of each week, I will always ask myself, what did I do to challenge myself, to scare myself this week? What did I do to take myself out of my comfort zone? There's an HP study that says that men, they feel like they have to be 60% ready when they're applying for that next job or asking for that next promotion. Women, on the other hand, have to feel like they have to be 100% ready for that
Oh,
next job or to go for that next promotion. You're never going to be 100% ready. When I was asked to be the chief growth officer, I wasn't ready to be the chief growth officer,
mhm.
right? But we have to go after that next challenge. And so my advice to this group is don't play it safe.
Mhm.
Go after that next challenge. Figure out how you take yourself out of your comfort zone because your male peers are going after that next challenge.
I think just like a lot of anxieties and thoughts and stresses that you have, most of them that I've realized that I end up giving energy to is all in my own head. And I'm like, wait, it's like not actually that real, It's like, okay, so what that this podcast flops, or so what that I'm trying out this thing that scares me that, not a lot of people have done before. And then I end up holding myself back, and I don't ever want to be in the way of my own growth and being my own biggest obstacle. I think that's just a lot of the times, a lot of my friends, I end up seeing them. I'm like, "What are your dreams? What are your goals?" And they're like, "Oh, it's XYZ." And I'm like, "Okay, do it." And then they're like, "But this and that." And I'm like, then we talk about their obstacles and the challenges, and it's always a common denominator of like it's all in their own heads, because they haven't even started. So we don't even know if that obstacle is even going to actually come up one day. So going back to just like starting now and like taking action immediately is just like the best piece of advice as well, kind of relating to what you said, that we could all adhere to. And there's another thing that I think is going to be worth mentioning. I'll get to it in a second, but Alex Harmozy, and something that he brought up recently, he talked about being like a godlike complex. So technically, when we think about God or whatever higher power, we imagine that if they're like, okay, I want to create water or sea with the snap of the fingers, it's there. And he talks about for us as individuals, what we can do to be the closest to being and having this godlike power, this godlike complex, is to have our goals out in front of us and have the least amount of distance in between the action that we take and the goal that we want. So, for example, if it's like, I want to be a CEO one day, it's like you have to take all of the actionable steps and shorten the distance and the time to get there as soon as possible and to make it happen the fastest way. And therefore, the only way to do that is to start now and to start today. So I think it's just like as women, we have to like, reframe that and always keep that in the back of our minds of whatever we have an inclination or a dream or a goal that we want to achieve one day.
So true.
And then what unique perspectives do you think women bring to these business industries?
Gosh, so many. I think, women tend to be more passionate. I see this great passion and drive in women that I don't oftentimes see in men. And that passion comes from strong interpersonal skills, including empathy, flexibility, the way they socialize and how much it enhances the overall end result of the team when we have a diverse, more women involved in the team.
Mhm.
We often talk about the ability to be able to balance a lot of things in our life. And I think me as a mom of two girls, the expectations of me versus my husband, they're very different. When if he's traveling or if he's doing whatever he's doing, no one is asking him the questions about, well, how do you balance that with young kids at home? And
Wow.
he
Yeah.
never got asked that question. Think about that. And even today, I mean, we've been married for 24 years, I think.
Congrats. That's
Um,
so great.
a long time.
Aw.
No one ever asks him, how do you balance family and work? But,
Mhm.
for me, I get asked that question all the time.
Wow.
And I think for women, we've had to do more, not, and I wouldn't say balancing, but I do a lot of what I call integrating. I would
Mhm.
integrate them into what I was doing. So when I had a big proposal or presentation, I would practice in front of my kids.
They
And I
like can't even read English and you're like, so this is good, right? And they're like goo goo gaga. Like you're like, okay, great.
So there were certain things I was not going to say no to. So there was a big meeting when I said no, I couldn't make it. It was really hard for me to do that, but I was moving my daughter back into college, and that was one of those non-negotiables.
I think the point you brought up of saying no to that important meeting to moving your daughter into college, that's just so important as well. I've learned throughout my little life on this planet of Earth that a lot of the times we prioritize success and like our end goal result and we sacrifice happiness. And we always have to reframe and rethink of like why our goals are our goals to begin with. I also realized that along the way, it's like if I say no to going out with my girlfriends or celebrating a birthday, taking time to enjoy Chicago and the whole reason why I left my family to just kind of self explore and to understand the world. And it's like the whole reason why I want to be successful and rich and wealthy is so I have time and money to have experiences like this, like just being able to have the freedom to hang out with your family or to, go see your daughter off to college. And it's like we work so hard for what, right? And then it's just like, if at the end of the day, we're just sacrificing all of those reasons just to end up in that one position in that one seat. It's like it's kind of very counterintuitive, but I always have to like check out myself and be like, Jess, like, is this worth saying no to? It's like just so you can, email back this one person or close out this book at the end of the day or, feel a little bit more productive, but at what cost? What you just talked about balancing and integrating those things as well is important to have under your non-negotiables.
Yeah. And they change over time, Jessica, for sure.
For sure, for sure. So, what skills have you found crucial for success in the business world?
I really think our best professionals show that passion and get their teams energized. The second thing is about being bold and developing boldness. So I talked a little bit about, how do we make sure we're scaring ourselves every day, taking ourselves out of our comfort zone. The third thing is to have this constant transform, reinvent mindset. As I said, this dynamic world, not only have to be bold, but then you have to have a mindset of constantly what's next, what's the future. The
Mhm.
fourth is all about relationships. I talked about how important relationships are, becoming indispensable and developing indispensable relationships and connections. I can't tell you enough how they will serve you no matter what career you're in, whatever you decide to do in the future. And then, my final thing would be constantly think about how you're learning, how you're developing yourself. and think about what can you to do to develop yourself faster, to learn, to be agile. And so those would probably be the pieces of advice I would give this group.
How can young professionals balance building their career with community involvement, such as what you just mentioned, as you've done with your non for profit work?
Yeah, I think it's all about getting involved in something that you're passionate about. So for
Right.
me, I'm passionate about underserved communities,
Hmm.
whether it's health equity in underserved communities, whether it's education in underserved communities, whether it's crime and violence in underserved communities. Those are the kinds of things. And because I'm so passionate about it, it gives me great energy to do those things.
Yes.
And so I
Yes.
would encourage you to find something that really excite you and build
Hmm.
that connection together. Like what would drive you in the community? What is something you would get up every day and say, I want to fix this. I want to change this. And that's really where I spend my time. And it's great because I get to
Mm.
bring my kids into it and get
Hmm.
to show them, they didn't grow up the way I grew up.
Like I heard you talking about it earlier, and you're just so proud of your background and where you came from and your upbringing that I could feel that resonate as you were just speaking over the call with me. And I was like, oh man, like what can I do to like give back to my community? So I think that's a beautiful thing as well. And I guess if you had to do it all over again, what would you have done differently? This could either touch upon your career or your personal life or wherever you want to take this question.
I think younger in my career, I probably did not do a good job of balancing being a wife, being
Mhm.
somebody that what likes to be healthy, taking care of myself, my own health, my body. I probably spent way too much time focused on my career. And so I remember being 8 months pregnant and pulling an all-nighter. So one example of just
Oh, wow.
stupidity. I ended up going into labor the next day. So I
Wow.
made dumb decisions. And
Right.
so I would be a lot smarter about taking care of myself
Mhm.
and um, yeah, my own health
Mhm.
while trying to still go, not taking anything away from the career because I
Mhm.
love this career. It gives me a lot of drive. But I probably, my first, 10 years, probably put career above everything else. I'll just say, Jessica, congratulations on this podcast. I'm so proud
Thank
of
you.
you for doing something that is making a difference in other girls and hopefully a lot of people's lives. So huge, so proud of you. And if there's anything I can do for you or
Mhm.
anyone else, let me know. You take care.
And that's the end for today's episode. Thank you so much, Seema, for hopping onto the podcast and spreading your wisdom with me and the rest of the audience here today. And thank you guys once again for tuning in. I appreciate you, and I hope to be publishing a new episode out shortly.